Hi, I'm Sherry Quam Taylor, and you are listening to the Business Behind Fundraising podcast. Today, we're talking about why your staff isn't soliciting major donors. What do I mean? Well, so often I have leaders or teams come to me, and when I do a little digging as to a lot of their major gift processes, I'll ask a question, and it goes something like, "Are you soliciting your mid and major level donors?" And oftentimes, we do. We have a spring appeal, we have a fall appeal, and then we have our event, that sort of thing. That's not what I'm asking. Those are appeals, I guess, in some sense, but those appeals are not the types of solicitations I'm talking about for major donors. And so often we are trying to attract major donors, we're trying to find major donors, we're trying to lead them to give their best gift, and they're simply not giving their best gift because we aren't asking and we aren't soliciting them. And so, if you think of that donor pyramid, I always have my hands like this. Those activities, like appeals, like events, those traditional like solicitation, transactional activities, those are really more suited for mass level donors or grassroots donors. You are rarely going to have a major donor give their best gift to your mission through that type of appeal. So, what does that look like? So, for major donors, I really do want it to be one on one, right? I want it to be in person if possible. I'll just say, as a side note, before 2020, I'd say get to that person, go to that person, fly to that person. I've obviously had to eat my words because now many of us are soliciting on Zooms. And frankly, my clients have never gotten bigger gifts than on Zoom. So, I'm eating my words on that one. But either way, your donors who can give larger gifts, we have to be leading them to solicitations, not shocking them with a solicitation, not mailing it to them, not saying, "Hey, did you get my email?" But really intentionally sitting down with them and soliciting for their best gift. It's exclusive. It's customized to their mission for giving. They know it's for them. We've served them in such a manner that we are literally leading them to an investment level conversation where they want to say yes and they want to give their best gift. So often, when we do have larger donors in our donor file and our team is not comfortable soliciting, they've never solicited. So often those donors just continue giving okay gifts and maybe sometimes a generous gift, but they're not giving their best gift. So I want you to make sure that you've segmented in your mind which one of our donors perhaps we need to be leading to that one-on-one solicitation. And really identifying that those areas are really where we're leaving money on the table. Now, I want you to hear me today saying this in love. I'm not beating up your development staff. So often in the sector, I had a totally separate career before I jumped into the nonprofit sector a dozen years ago. We've all had these interesting journeys into the nonprofit sector. Some of us have grown up through the program side. And along the way, we said, I think I could do that over there too. That's great. You know so much about the programs. And now you find yourself in a fundraising role. So often our backgrounds are just simply something else. I coach people to fundraise who are doctors, lawyers, pastors, social workers, doctors, teachers, like all of those types of things. That's pretty cool. But now they've found themselves in a fundraising position. And so often it's no fault of the fundraisers, it's no fault of their own, right? They've just simply never had the training to do this. And so I think of even two amazing students of mine. I think of Trey, who is a pastor and is in a lead fundraising role. And I distinctly remember him saying to me, I don't know what I don't know. I'm doing pretty well. I mean, he was doing really well. But we also both, after a quick discussion, we immediately knew there was money sitting on the table. So what does he learn to do? He's learned to build that relationship. He's learned to lead that donor. He's learned what tools he needs to have in hand to solicit. And now he's soliciting the greatest gifts of his career. Organization is back in the black after 3 years in the red. Regulars securing 5 and 6 figure unrestricted gifts to the mission. Is reaching and exceeding his goals every single year because he invested in himself, because he's an expert at something else. Now he's an expert at fundraising. I think of my client Sarah, who's the development director, and how she she came up through the program side. She's the perfect person to be telling everybody about the organization. She intimately knows the day-to-day of the program. But her organization was very heavily weighted on using a multi-year commitment with individuals. And she said, how do I move people who I know could be giving greater gifts, who I know are not giving their best gift? How can we move them out of these 3-year multi-year commitments to a much larger one-time gift and then annual gift after that? She knows she's so good at so many things. She's one of my favorite people to coach. She's a great learner. But what are those kind of final steps I've just never had to do? And so so many fundraising professionals, we've got to take the time and the budget to invest in their growth. If we are not doing that, we're leaving money on the table. Now, on the flip side, many of us have fundraising staffs where they've actually been in fundraising forever, and they are experts at appeals, planning events, writing killer grant proposals, securing corporate sponsorships, all the traditional fundraising methods that we all know so well. But that list is very secondary to major donors. And so often groups come to me and say, well, we want to start that relational-based fundraising. We want to grow our major gifts. We want to move into these types of things, but how do we do both of those things? And I would ask that, is that a skill set that's missing on your staff? Or do we need to look at, maybe that person can do that, but we need to alleviate or remove from their schedule, help them stop doing some of those things, or put it onto a contractor, put it onto somebody else, so that we can free up time to start doing more strategic, high ROI fundraising activities. Because can that fundraising staff who is doing all of those things, does someone on your team have the ability to sit down and share with donors why you need general operating gifts, why you need large general operating gifts? Do they have the ability to present your financials, share with you how are we funded, how do we spend money, what has our funding trajectory been, why did you dip down that 1 year? That's a little weird. Do they have the ability to sit and have that discussion? Are they able to explain why you need a reserve? Gosh, before 2020, so many of my clients came to me, maybe a 3 to 4 month reserve. I think we all thought that was fine. Now that we realized that wasn't fine, right? We want a 9-month, perhaps, maybe a 12-month. I think it's different for everybody. But is that person able to sit and have that CEO to CEO conversation and explain to a donor why you're also raising and saving this reserve, right? And then I think the biggest indicator would be, does your development director or does somebody on your team or who's leading your team, do they have the ability to really lead your top 30 donors? So if we want our top 30 donors yielding between 50 and 75% of our annual revenue, and we want that to be unrestricted, do they have the ability to do that? Or do they need coaching so they can learn how to do that? Do you see the difference there? These are very different skill sets. There's another kind of cousin problem to this that I'll share as to kind of frame up this in our minds. And we see it a lot in nonprofit fundraising, where our development director is also in charge of all of the marketing and communications. And we're expecting them to carry both of those departments, if you will. Again, two very different skill sets. And so often when we put that under the development director and expect them to manage all of that, that's actually the reason why they're not raising more money. Because our natural inclination is to pivot into all the deadline-driven things, and especially if Marcom is on their plate, it's a monthly newsletter time, it's that event that's coming down the pipeline, those types of things. When more of a mid and major level gift portfolio it's discipline, it's rhythm, it's a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual, personal accountability to really be working with your portfolio of donors. What I want you to hear me today is your donors who can give larger gifts are only going to do that when you've created a great donor experience for them, and you've led them, you've answered their questions, you have tied their heart to what you're doing, and then you've solicited them. You have made that ask, and that path is very hard to do if you've never had to do that before. But I have to tell you, your donors are waiting for you to do that. They maybe wouldn't say it. I think they're begging you to do that. I have a client who I worked with for years and years ago, when I used to come along and sit in solicitations, and I sat in a solicitation, and we had worked really hard on just taking the time, leading that donor. And we put some amazing tools in place. And we sat down with that donor because we knew that donor was writing much larger checks to organizations down the road. And I can hear it to this day. And gosh, it was years ago, when my client made the ask and did a great job at it. And I heard that donor say, "You've never asked me before. You've never asked me. Why haven't you asked me this?" And so that donor grew their $12,000 a year gift to over 6 figures because they'd never solicited them before. They were depending on kind of the donor to decide what the best gift was. They were just kind of, it'll come in, he loves us, that kind of thing. You're never going to get a donor's best gift when we're approaching it that way. So I want you to remember that your organization can secure all the big money its big vision requires, all the money your strategic plan requires, if you focus first on the business behind your fundraising. And that is especially true when we're talking about these investment level donor conversations. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a like, a subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll get weekly content. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast, please take a minute to give me a review on Apple Podcasts, and I'll see you next week.